All right, AIGP candidates, welcome. If you are gearing up for your certification, you know Domain 2 is a big one. Today, we're going to tackle it head on with a power session focused on how all those laws, standards, and frameworks actually apply to AI.
Okay, so Domain 2 is a critical part of this exam, and you've got to know it inside and out. To help you do just that, we're going to run through 20 rapid-fire practice questions. This is all about testing what you know, locking in those key concepts, and getting you one step closer to that certification. You ready? Let's do this. First up, we're diving into the global regulatory landscape with a huge focus on the EU AI Act. Honestly, these are the foundational rules you absolutely can't afford to get wrong. Let's see how you do. First question. What's the consistent approach we're seeing across all the major global AI laws, like the EU AI Act? It's a risk-based approach. This is the single most important principle to understand. Not all AI is treated equally. The higher the potential harm to people, the stricter the rules. It's that simple, and it's the foundation for everything else. All right, think about all the major global AI guidelines out there. You know, the OECD principles, the White House blueprint. Of all of them, which one is actually legally binding? That would be the EU AI Act. This is what makes it such a big deal. While other frameworks are what we call influential soft law, the EU AI Act is hard law. It has real teeth and serious legal consequences if you don't comply. So, with all these different rules popping up around the world, what's the smart way for a multinational company to handle its AI compliance? Well, they should build a harmonized framework that's based on the strictest regulations out there. Basically, you take the EU AI Act as your high watermark, build your program to meet that standard, and then you've got a single, unified approach that works everywhere. It's way more efficient. Let's get into definitions. How does the EU AI Act define an AI provider? It's the organization that develops the AI and puts it on the market under its own name or trademark. This is a super important definition for the exam because the provider is the one who carries most of the legal weight, from design all the way through to post-market monitoring. Okay, picture an AI system that screens job applications. How would that be classified under the EU AI Act? That is a classic example of a high-risk system. And why? Because decisions about employment have a massive, direct impact on people's lives and their ability to make a living. You can see why regulators are all over this one, demanding fairness and serious oversight. So, building on that, what is a non-negotiable data governance rule for any high-risk AI system? The training data. It has to be relevant, it has to be representative, and you have to be constantly checking it for errors and bias. This gets right to the heart of that garbage in, garbage out problem. For a high-risk system to be compliant, its data foundation absolutely has to be solid. When a provider puts that CE mark on their AI system, what are they actually declaring? They're really saying three things. 1, the system passed its conformity assessment. 2, all the technical documents are complete and ready for inspection. And 3, the provider is taking full legal responsibility. Think of it as the official stamp that says, "We did the work and we stand by this product." Now, when is it okay to process sensitive data? We're talking things like racial or ethnic origin in a high-risk AI system. There's only one very narrow exception. It's allowed only when it is strictly necessary to detect and correct bias. The goal isn't to use that data for any other reason. It's a targeted, limited permission specifically for the purpose of making that one AI model more fair. What's the absolute maximum penalty for deploying a prohibited AI practice under the EU AI Act? It's a fine of up to 35 million euros or 7% of your company's total worldwide annual turnover, whichever is higher. That 7% figure can be a staggering amount of money for a big company, which tells you just how seriously regulators are taking this. Okay, what about the big guys, the providers of general-purpose AI models? What's a key transparency step they have to take? They have to publish a detailed summary of the data they used for training. You can think of this as a mandatory ingredients list for the AI. It's crucial because anyone building on top of that foundation model needs to know what went into it to manage their own risks. Fantastic job on that first section. Now let's broaden our scope a bit. We're going to look at how AI governance bumps up against other major areas of law, like privacy and liability, and we'll see how different countries are tackling these very same challenges. So, if a company builds an AI marketing tool but is very careful to only collect the data it absolutely needs, which two core privacy principles is it applying? That would be data minimization and collection limitation. These are foundational ideas in privacy. Only collect what you need for the specific purpose you've defined and not a single byte more. Under Europe's GDPR, what kind of AI use triggers the need for a data protection impact assessment or a DPIA? The trigger is any automated decision-making or large-scale profiling that has a significant legal or similar impact on people. And here's a huge exam tip for you. Because of their very nature, almost all high-risk AI systems are going to trigger this requirement. You should always connect those two in your mind. And following right up on that, which specific article in the GDPR is the one that restricts decisions based solely on automated processing? That is Article 22. It's really helpful to think of this as the original AI article of the GDPR, long before we had the AI Act. It's what establishes that fundamental right for people to have a human in the loop for major automated decisions. Let's talk intellectual property. What's a key IP challenge that's blowing up right now with generative AI? Oh, it's the massive legal battle over training data. On one side, you have AI developers who scrape the web and claim fair use. On the other, you have artists, writers, and creators who call it massive copyright infringement. This is one of the biggest, most unresolved legal fights in the AI world today. All right, let's talk liability. In the US, is AI software legally considered a product? And how is Europe's approach looking different? This slide shows a really important split. In the United States, it's still legally up in the air whether software even counts as a product for strict liability lawsuits. But meanwhile, the EU is actively rewriting its laws to explicitly include software, which will make it much easier for people who are harmed by AI to get compensation. Two very different paths. Thinking about consumer protection laws, like the FTC Act in the US, what's a company's responsibility when it comes to its customer-facing chatbots? They have to make sure the chatbot isn't being unfair or deceptive. So, for example, if your company's chatbot hallucinates and tells a customer you have a 90-day return policy when it's really only 30 days, your company could be held responsible for that false claim. What's the main focus of the AREA program from NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology? It is all about the practical, hands-on side of AI safety. The AREA program is busy developing the real-world tools and methods we need to actually evaluate AI systems. Things like standard metrics, test scenarios, and even red teaming models to actively hunt for their weaknesses. Okay, let's go global again. How does South Korea's AI Basic Act regulate what it calls high-impact AI? It requires a lot of the things you'd probably expect: risk management, explainability, human supervision. But it also adds requirements for impact assessments. And interestingly, for any foreign company, they have to appoint a domestic agent. It's just another flavor of that risk-based approach we keep talking about. Last question. What's the primary focus of China's rules for generative AI? The focus is squarely on security and content control. The key requirements you need to know are security filings with the Cyberspace Administration of China, or CAC, mandatory safety assessments before you can launch, and watermarking all AI-generated content. So, how did you do? Hopefully, a few key themes are crystal clear by now. First, global AI law is fundamentally risk-based. Second, the EU AI Act is setting that strict global baseline. Third, high-risk systems come with a ton of compliance duties. And finally, AI is touching every area of the law, with every country adding its own unique spin. Look, you're putting in the hard work to understand today's incredibly complex regulations. So the real final question is this. After you ace this exam and get that certification, how are you going to use all this knowledge to build the trustworthy AI of tomorrow? Good luck with your studies. You've got this.